As always,
well, good morning and
welcome.
Like
and subscribe to this show if you've not already done so. Every click helps other motorcyclists discover my content, or simply share the word the old-fashioned.
Right, many apologies for that. The studio that I use has been reconfigured again online without me doing anything to it. So everything is all over the place as I logged in this morning. Anyway, here I am, and I seem to be stuttering badly with my video. I have no idea why that is. It's plugged into the Ethernet connection, so it should be fast enough. Hopefully you can hear me and it's not too bad, but it is very irritating. Anyway, it's Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams. It's of Survival Skills Rider Training. It's show number 566 and it's Wednesday the 24th of September. So what have we got for you in today's show? Well, quite a lot to talk about. 25-year-old rider with a string of driving convictions has been jailed for 21 months after running down and killing an elderly pedestrian. In Czech Republic, the police have tracked down a driver who has apparently been using an F2 Dallara race car on the roads. Shropshire village they're still waiting for bridge repairs a year after it was damaged and cut the village in two. Yogesh Alekari, the Indian overlander, he has resumed his travels and hopefully he will have a pleasant journey for the rest of his trip. Ruroc, interesting story this, the Gloucester-based UK helmet manufacturer, they have gone into administration and then promptly bought themselves out of it. And we'll explain how that affects their creditors shortly. Honda have unveiled a surprise, a pair of 4-pot 500s. And we'll finally look at a sort of a three-wheeler. It sort of brings the Flintstone car right up to date. This is called the Cixi Vigoz, and we'll have a look at that rather bizarre item. Now, finally, in depth today, I'll be looking at the role of the clutch in making tight right and left turns, which I think will be found useful by some. Right, okay, so let me turn that off. Now, don't forget, if you've got a comment, a question, anything you want to ask, do ask away, and I will try to answer you during the show. I am live today. If I can't do it during the show, I'll get back to you after the show. Right, okay, so let's get on with the first item of the day. Now, this is an interesting one, actually, because it's a headline that appeared in Motorcycle News, and it said, Royal Enfield to supply British Army in new Himalayan deal, rekindling their former military ties. So, if you were expecting that the Army would be starting to use bikes built by Himalaya, by Royal Enfield and out in active service, I think you could probably be excused for believing that. But in fact, the deal is something rather different. For heaven's sakes. Right, I do apologise. I hadn't checked the website before I started, but it's been entirely reconfigured. So everything that I am trying to do isn't working as it should do. So I'm not quite sure what is going on here. I can't get my video up. Can't get my graphics up. Oh, for heaven's sake. This is utterly, utterly annoying. Right, I'll just have to go on without the graphics for the moment. That's the graphic I want, but I can't get it to show alongside me. Ah, there we go. I've finally done it. They've absolutely unbelievable. Right. Anyway, so where was I? It's yes, the story that the British Army is being supplied by Royal Enfield with Himalayans. The motorcycle's been used for a long time. If I'm right, and I'm ready to be corrected, I believe it was First World War when they will use carry messages from place to place for the first time. But it turns out the bikes, of course, aren't going to be used on active deployment. Instead, the Indian company is supplying the British Army Motorised Adventure Group with 4 of the 450 adventure bikes. And they'll be used for training and development exercises across the UK. And soldiers will be riding them in public events. So not quite the British Army. Now, if you like reading your learning about motorcycling in small, easy to digest chunks, then why not take a look at my latest mini ebook? Now, this is this one here, Climbing Through the Gears. I know that learning new skills can feel daunting. I mean, obviously I try to learn new things from time to time, and sometimes they are a bit of a struggle. Particularly when our first experience of that learning isn't actually a positive one, it's a failure. Now, the truth is that learning to ride is a seriously challenging experience. And if you spend a little time alongside a CBT trainer working with a complete novice to see how hard they actually have to work to get the basics instilled into a new biker, it'll give you a clue as to how hard we have to work as trainees too. So the answer is simple. Whenever we build to learn, we start with the basics and we progressively move upwards. Now, this is how I wrote my survival skills paperback book a few years ago. So learning skills is like using the gearbox. This is a series which I put together for my Tips on Tuesday on Facebook and on my coffee pages, and the mini ebook pulls all these together. And basically what it explains is what doesn't matter whether you're looking for a sort of new learning as a novice, whether you're looking for some fixes for your riding at an intermediate level, or even if you're an advanced rider who wants to move on to higher things, you may be surprised that you are asked to revisit the basics before moving on to the next level. Now, I've pulled all these together. I've added a couple of case studies at the end as well, covering cornering and overtaking. And the entire series is available as this mini ebook. So it offers a very different perspective to the usual culprits like the IAM handbook, for example, and police roadcraft, because they tell you what to do, but they don't tell you how to actually learn to improve your own skills. So that's the big difference here. And it uses the metaphor of sequential gears in the motorcycle gearbox to explain why it is that we have to move up layer by layer to improve. And just one quick answer to a question I received recently: why do these mini ebooks have a wide blank margin? Now, it's not to up the page count, as some people seem to have thought, but it's actually to give you a blank margin in which you can write your own notes. I thought that would be quite a useful feature of these little books. Right, so okay, hopefully we'll now see the weather forecast. There it is. Now, it's a funny thing. Until very recently indeed, and as far as most people's awareness was concerned, I think that we kind of thought that hurricanes were things that happened over the other side of the Atlantic, and they impacted the Caribbean islands or the southern states of the US, or sort of Mexico and the sort of northern states of South America. Few people this side of the big pond were ever aware that hurricanes actually many of the hurricanes don't actually make landfall at all in the Americas, and they actually end up heading eastwards across the Atlantic. And as they decay, they end up affecting late summer and autumn weather in Europe. But of course, hurricanes stories are effective clickbait, so they're seen at this time of year with lurid headlines The headline from the Metro website, for example, claimed Hurricane Gabrielle is predicted to wreak yet more wet and wild weather on the UK. And they went on to say the storm is gathering speed, with weather models showing Gabrielle raging eastwards across the Atlantic towards Europe and getting closer to the UK. Well, it's true that Gabrielle had strengthened to a Category 4 storm, which is a powerful hurricane. But as you can see from the picture here, even by Monday, which is when this forecast was made, the tracks showed it heading for the Iberian Peninsula rather than the UK. And although the storm does look set to retain its tropical characteristics rather longer than is usual, it's already weakening, and it's currently forecast to make landfall in Portugal as a tropical depression, which will be wet and windy, but definitely not wild. And in any case, it's tracking well to the south of the UK, so impacts on the British weather are likely to be minimal, says the official forecaster, the Met Office. So put that to one side and look forward to the rest of the weather. Now, the actual weather is that it looks like the current spell of settled weather will extend on into the weekend. This morning, there are patches of mist and fog, which could be slow to lift up in the north. Otherwise, the rest of the day will continue dry with a mix of sunny spells and variable cloud. It's quite sunny here in London at the moment. Breezy in the southeast, though. Thursday looks sunny across the UK. Patches of light variable cloud. They'll be around in places, and it will be breezy again in the southeast, but also this time in the northwest of Scotland. Now, Friday is likely to see another mix of sunny spells, but there could be rather more patchy cloud forming during the day. And the northwest will see cloud and wind building and bringing rain late on into that area. And that will continue up there into Saturday. But the further south and east you go, the brighter and drier it should be. And down in the southeast, it should be pleasant. So, okay, that is the weather forecast. As you can see, it's not, don't worry about the hurricane. It's not coming. I can confidently say that, even if Michael Fish got into trouble saying that a few years ago. Right, so on with the news. A 25-year-old man who ran down an 86-year-old pensioner in Keston in southeast London in April 2023 had a history of driving conditions. Now, Daniel Redpath was apparently riding a 125 Aprilia on a provisional license when he hit 86-year-old Kumar Singh because he'd lost his full license after racking up 6 points within 2 years of passing his test. Crash investigators said Redpath could have been riding up to 64 miles per hour in the 40 limit. He was displaying only a single L plate on the rear of his machine, and the tyres were found to be unsafe. He was breathalyzed following the incident, and though he blew a negative test for alcohol, he was tested positive for cannabis, though he was later found under the legal limit by blood test. What other offences had he committed? Well, in September 2020, he was caught driving without insurance. He was fined £660 and issued 6 penalty points. He was stopped again in 2021, this time for driving whilst disqualified. And for that, his disqualification was extended for a further 6 months. He handed a community order. He was also caught with a bladed article and cannabis. And in the current case, Redpath admitted to causing death by careless driving, and he's been sentenced to 21 months in custody. And he's been banned for another 3-year period. Now, this is an odd story. I don't normally talk about cars, but I thought this one was particularly interesting because an elusive phantom driver has been caught in the Czech Republic. The first reports of a red Formula 2 race car being driven down motorways in the Czech Republic began to trickle in back in 2019. Police confirmed sightings through traffic cameras, but with no plates, obviously, and with the driver wearing a reflective visor in his helmet, the vehicle vanished without trace. But at the weekend, the driver's luck ran out. He was spotted refueling at a gas station about 40 kilometers from Prague, and police were able to track the vehicle to a private property in the village of Bok, where they found the 2008 F2 Dallara being towed by a civilian vehicle. Now, vehicles obviously like this are strictly banned from public roads. The Czech police said in a statement, the Formula car has sharp edges and does not have lights, turn signals, license plates, or other important safety features. Now, when confronted, the 51-year-old man driving the car told police they were trespassing and refused to cooperate. After a short standoff, he agreed to be taken to a police station for questioning, but remained mostly silent. His son later spoke to reporters and said police allegedly saw us towing a Formula One car, which they claimed had been speeding along the motorway a few minutes earlier. Of course, we know absolutely nothing about this. If he is found guilty, the phantom driver could face a fine of between 5,000 and 10,000 Czech koruna, roughly 200 to 400 pounds. And he could get a driving ban of up to 6 months or a year. But police do have the hurdle, of course, of proving his identity. But I'm sure they'll have a fallback charge along the lines of obstructing police ready, though. Now, a year after Storm Bert damaged Bronigarth's 200-year-old bridge, residents are still living in a village of two halves. What happened? Heavy rain and melting snow caused huge amounts of water to come down the stream bed, but unfortunately it was so vast it actually poured over the top of the bridge rather than running through the culvert underneath it, and so you can see the damage it's done to the parapet and the structure of the bridge there. Now the locals say that delays have left the 2,000 residents in the village marooned in a never-ending nightmare. The bridge was expected to be repaired in 17 weeks, but a year on it still lies untouched. And this forces locals to take a 12-mile round trip if they want to get to the other side of the village. So if you want to go shopping from one side to the other, then you either have to go 6 miles there and 6 miles back, or you have to cross into Wales and shop somewhere else. Now, one landowner whose own property was damaged is letting pedestrians walk across his land, which borders the closed road, so they can avoid the diversion. I'm not quite sure how they get across the stream, though. Probably, perhaps he's put a bridge up himself. I don't know. Anyway, Shropshire Council, they've apologised. They blame negotiations with the Woodland Trust, which of course protects ancient woodland, but residents now fear it could take years to sort this out. Right, hang on a minute, and I will try to get my video running.
Please, can I ask you to take a moment to like and subscribe to this show if you've not already done so? Every click helps other cyclists discover my content, or simply share the word the old-fashioned way by telling your riding buddies about Elevenses. They can watch on catch-up. Remember, my latest riding skills articles are always free, and you can get all the links delivered weekly to your email inbox by subscribing to my newsletter at survivalskillsuk.substack.com. Or you can use this QR code to jump straight to it when the show's over, of course. No spam, and if you don't like the content, unsubscribe at any time. If you enjoy
Right, I don't know why we're so
why not
stuttery.
become a member?
Oh, for heaven's sake. Right, it's supposed to stop as soon as I switch scenes, and it's not doing it. Anyway, there we go. Right, some comments from people. Nick said he's back from touring the Picos. I hope you enjoyed it. I love the Picos. And he also says the QR code is the wrong one. Duh. Okay, I will have to sort that out, obviously. I'll try and find the right one later. And Sue's looked in. Good morning. Right, sorry about that. It's really gone a bit pear-shaped this morning, hasn't it? Oh dear. Anyway, on Tuesday, Visadum, they led with a headline claiming that 1 in 5 UK bikers will have their motorcycles stolen. No laughing matter, but sorry, I'm still giggling about the mess up in the show this morning. Where did they get this from? Well, it was the insurance company Carol Nash, who'd apparently conducted an internal survey of 1,000 British riders in April 2024. They concluded from this that 1 in 5, 20%, have had their bikes stolen. Now, I hope if you've been following me, you'll be getting used to reading headline figures like this and starting to ask some extra questions. The most obvious one, of course, is what's the baseline? Because we're not told over which period the study looked backwards at theft. So if you go back to the early 80s, and you'd have done the study from the time when I started riding in the mid 70s, you'll have discovered that I had 2 bikes, in fact, stolen. One was recovered by myself, actually. The police found it and I went and picked it up. Since then, I've managed to hang on to all of them, fingers crossed, touching wood and all that kind of thing. Now, the latest data for 2024 suggests that just under 16,000 bikes were stolen across the UK. Now, with 1.3 odd million riders active, that's about 1.2% of riders will actually have had a bike stolen in the last year. That's quite a long way from the 20% of the headline. Even if you take the claim of 40,000 bikes a year being stolen that features in an article by a tracker company, which I believe is data from quite a few years back, it would still only mean 3% of riders had a bike pinched. Now, more useful was the data on where bikes are actually lifted from. And whilst I'm not in the least bit surprised that 23% of motorcycles stolen from on the street and 21% vanish from driveways and gardens, I am very surprised to discover that 18% vanish from an outbuilding, a garage or a shed. Now, of course, if you've done your mathematics there, you'll realise that 23, 21 and 18 don't add up to anything like 100%. So I'm left wondering where the other 40 odd % of motorcycles actually disappear from. But of course, these figures themselves could be skewed because we don't know if Carol Nash cover a representative proportion of all motorcycle types. For example, if we know that sort of small bikes like 125s and scooters are particularly theft prone, if they don't cover those, if they charge too much for the owners and they go somewhere else, then their figures will be skewed. And we don't know if their policy demands specific parking conditions in their policy. So effectively, it's a fairly meaningless article. Anyway, moving on from the theft issue, from the numbers to a specific instance of theft. Let's see if I can get the picture up. No, that's the wrong one again. What is going on? Right, okay. That is Yogesh Alekari, and that is him setting off on his long distance trip. You'll recall that he had his bike stolen along with all his documents and all his belongings too, after parking the bike up to have breakfast with a friend in Nottingham. Now, you'll recall that he was gifted a 2020 KTM 790 Adventure by the nearby off-road centre, and now he has his passport and his licence back in hand. He's finally been able to resume his journey. He set off on Friday. Now, he's obviously found a way around the difficulties of insuring and taxing the machine in the UK because when he was pictured riding off, the bike clearly has a UK plate. Interestingly, I noticed that the report also added a couple of extra details about the theft of his 390 because I suspect he's been getting some questions about this. He said he parked his bike in a visible space, although that doesn't mean very much, does it? And he said it was also secured with a disc lock. Well, as we know, cheap disc locks can be attacked with a sort of brute force half brick or something like that will smash most of them. But I'd still be interested to know how it was that his bike was actually able to be ridden away under its own power. Anyway, good luck to him. He's off towards Africa, and I hope he has an uneventful journey. Now, I'm going to try and run the next section of the video. Let me see if I can get that up.
these shows, why not become a member of my Coffee pages? Just follow the QR and sign up. As a member, you get free access to the latest articles to the Survival Skills ebook shop with instant downloads of everything from free mini ebooks to ebook versions of my paperbacks. Become a one-off supporter and you'll open up the archive of over 1,000 articles. If you buy me a monthly cuppa as a subscriber, there's even more content to enjoy. Ah, dear, it really is all going pear-shaped this morning. It really is going pear-shaped this morning. I do apologise. As I say, I tried to set these shows up in advance, and everything was set up ready to run last night. And there's just been some major changes to the interface this morning, which I have absolutely no control over. Anyway, let's move on to the next story, and this is an odd one as well. This is about Ruroc. Now, founded in 2007, they're a Gloucester-based manufacturer. That's Gloucester, UK, and they make rather distinctive motorcycle helmets for ski and riding use. So let's try and get the picture up. I wouldn't be putting my head in something that looks like a sort of an extra from the Predator, but they do have, it says, a loyal following among extreme sports enthusiasts, and they sell direct to customers online. But it seems that their ambitious business expansion has left them prone to cash flow pressures, tightening consumer spending, rising input costs, lingering post-pandemic supply chain challenges. Industry analysts have all said have contributed to financial strain that forced Ruroc into self-imposed administration. Now, that's when the story takes a rather odd twist. Now, having appointed an administrator in the form of PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ruroc then engaged in what's called pre-packaged administration. Now, this is a controversial but legal strategy which allows the company to shed debt whilst continuing to allow the business to operate. So here's how it works, with the chronology of events. On September the 4th this year, a new entity, Titan PG Limited, that was incorporated as a wholly owned subsidiary of Ruroc Global Holdings Limited, and that is the parent company of Ruroc Limited. Now, just over a week later, on September the 12th, Ruroc Limited appointed the insolvency firm, PwC, as administrators. Now, the administrators then execute what's called this pre-pack deal. They sold most of Ruroc Limited's assets and the business itself to Titan PG Limited. So this means that Ruroc's operations continue under Titan PG. The website simply updated its copyright. All employees get transferred to the new company. And this is known as pre-pack administration because the sale of the business is arranged with the buyer before the administrator is formally appointed. Now, what this does is it creates a distinct separation between the new debt-free entity and the old entity's unpaid creditors. So basically, the new business can keep manufacturing the helmets that the old business made, and the key effect of this transaction is that the old company is left behind in the administrative process along with its debts. And, I have to say, I'm actually very surprised this is actually a legal way because it offloads the debt. The creditors of the original company are now categorized as unsecured creditors, which means that when the administrators work out how much money is left in the old company, there's no guarantee they'll be paid in full. There's no guarantee, in fact, they'll be paid anything. Under UK law, the unsecured creditors are at the bottom of the repayment hierarchy, sort of after entities like the Inland Revenue, for example. So, yeah, okay, it appears to be legal, but, I'm guessing that it's not
going to have great repercussions with the creditors, for example, who are likely to feel burned, and they may in fact be unwilling to work with the business in the future. The company may find it more difficult and expensive to obtain future lines of credit too. KTM did something rather similar. They went into a protected administration and they negotiated a deal where they paid back just 30% of what they owed to creditors. And that has seemingly left a sour taste in many suppliers' mouths. And anyway, there's the brand reputation to think about. The public perceptions of this sort of practice as unethical does risk alienating customers, though I dare say many will be unaware of it. But this is on top of consumer reports about the poor quality of their rather premium price helmets. They're actually manufactured at a dedicated factory in China, and it's only the customers or the customer service development team that apparently is located at the headquarters in Gloucester. Right, so that's an interesting story. Sue has said, had a bike stolen, reported to the police. They never even turned out because I later found it abandoned in my own street. Yes, that happens surprisingly often. Nick also says his cousin had a bike stolen in Somerset, but he said fortunately found nearby, relatively undamaged. And Nick also says Picos were fantastic. And he's going back again, but it rained stair rods on arrival, fortunately extinguishing all the wildfires. Yeah, okay. So yes, it can rain in northern Spain. People do tend to forget that. But you cross the mountain, you're straight into the desert. So it's pretty interesting place for weather and climate, basically. Right, okay. So what have we got next? Ultraviolet. Yes, of course, that's the next story. Let's move the picture along. That is not the right picture. That is the correct picture. Let's give you a zoom in picture on that one. Now, if you watch the electric motorcycle special on Sunday, which I tried to analyze as best I could the current state of play in the electric motorcycle market, you'll know that Ultraviolet got a mention, and it's a company which seems to have managed to produce a bike, the F77, that not only has decent performance stats and a very affordable price, but is above all, most importantly, really, is actually in production. And they've just announced this new bike in India. It's the X47 crossover. It's said to be 3 bikes in one, though it looks more like just an adventure bike to me. The X47 is said to have a 60/40 on off-road designation. It probably makes it absolutely perfect for our roads here in the UK, actually. So underpinning the new bike here is the same battery as fitted to the F77 sports machine. It offers a maximum claimed range of 323 kilometers, which is around 200 miles. Compare and contrast with that Honda that I featured last week in the previous show too. The bike gets a new fast charger, which is built in under the seat. Now, power output is modest. It's an A2 friendly 38 horsepower, but as usual with an electric motor, peak torque is massive, 610 Newton meters, 449 pound-feet. So acceleration off the line should be pretty brisk. There's 4-way traction control, which can be disengaged. There's 2-channel switchable ABS and 9-level regenerative braking too. Which is important in extending range. The bike also apparently features dynamic stability control, which, as far as I can work out, helps prevent the rear lifting and locking under heavy braking. Now, it's also fitted with some advanced features, radar detection. They call that Hypersense. This provides blind spot detection, lane change assist, and rear collision warning. The machine also gets dual dash cams, front and rear, and there is apparently a display above the standard TFT display, so you can use those on the move if you would want to. Not sure why you would. No UK or Euro pricing has yet been announced, but it's reported to be listed at, just wait for this, £2,000 in India. Now, deliveries are due to begin as soon as next month. Pre-orders on the Ultraviolet website were due to open yesterday. Now, on Sunday, I said I think the Honda WN7 will lack the appeal to persuade many riders to switch to electric bikes. It's too expensive, too short on range. But could the X47 be the bike to start changing a few minds? Now, within a couple of years of passing my bike test back in mid-70s, I was riding a CB404, a bike that sold in huge numbers in the UK, but it was only actually built for 3 years, if I remember right. And the final models rolled off the production line in 1978. Mine was one of them. I love that bike enough to actually buy 2 more secondhand, although neither were quite as perfect as the original. The 4-cylinder machine was replaced by what many people would say were the relatively uninspiring 400 Dream and then Super Dream twins. The argument at the time was that the 4 was complex and thus expensive to build. Now, as show season looms, the first reveals of new machines are taking place. And here's the first one I want to show you. And I think this will be a surprise to most people. This is the CB500 Super 4, the CB500 SF. It's just appeared at the China International Motorcycle Exhibition. Now, it shares the sort of design features with the CB1000F, which is already ready to be delivered to the UK early next year. And just like the CB1000, the new 500 takes its looks from the CB750F and 900F Eurosports models, which were produced through 79 to 83. They were air-cooled. They introduced a double overhead cam top end, and they had Comstar built-up wheels, you may recall. Now, the surprise is that the CB500 SF isn't another rehash of the existing 500cc twin-cylinder platform, which I would quite have expected, but it incorporates an inline 4-cylinder engine, which you can see from those beautifully swoopy downpipes there. Now, there's little else known about the bike. There are some claims that it's 80 horsepower, though possibly that's a little bit exaggerated, but I'm guessing that the 650 is probably the base for the new motor. The radiator trim, interestingly, looks just like that found on my 2002 Hornet. So the bike will come with Honda's E-clutch as an option. That's already available, of course, for the 650, which tends to confirm it's probably a very, very similar base engine. Whether the bike will make it to the UK and Europe, I don't know. I personally love it, particularly those sort of swoopy 404-esque exhaust headers. But I would like it even more if Honda accepted that some of us don't like the wind blowing in our teeth every moment of the day, and came with sort of a half faired version. Now, there is this one, apparently. This is an R model, which has a sort of race style fairing. But you'll notice it also has the huge dustbin fairing. And of course, it couples up those lovely swoopy exhaust pipes. So I think this is nothing like as pretty as the Naked. Right, okay. So moving on swiftly, I do cover 3-wheelers, of course, on this show. And this is one here. And this is it's French manufactured. It's a Cixi Vigoz, and it's an electric trike. Trike or tripe? Trike. But it took me straight back to the Flintstones, because you'll probably remember how Fred and Barney had to use pedal foot power to pedal their cars around in that cartoon series. And that's because the Vigoz, it's a sort of an inline 2-seater. You can just make out the passenger in the back seat there if I zoom in. It's also pedal powered. Not quite feet through the floor, though. The electric trike, it's supposed to be able to travel at speeds of up to 75 miles per hour, but only while the driver pedals inside the cab. Cixi call this a pedaling energy recovery system. But whilst you can choose just how much effort is needed to reach which speed, I very much doubt that this chainless system is actually generating anything much in the way of useful drive. It's just a way of telling the vehicle electronics how much battery power to transfer to the drivetrain. Pedal faster, it speeds up, allegedly to that highest top speed. Spin the pedals more slowly, it slows down again. And if you stop pedaling, as you probably guessed, it stops too. Now, just to add to the complications, the cab tilts on the narrow track 3 wheels, something we've seen fairly regularly recent months. Now, not too surprisingly, there's no time frame for a full launch. There's no price, but there will be a pre-registration phase in which the company will no doubt attempt to separate you from your cash against some unspecified delivery in the future when this turns from a render to real life. Right, okay, now it is time to move on to the in-depth item today. So let me just bring the picture around. Now, today I'm going to talk about the role of the clutch in making tight left and right turns. Now, years ago, when I first got my website up and running, we're talking the late 90s actually, I had a feature called the Doctor's Surgery, in which I helped out riders who had a question to ask. Websites were fairly few and far between then, so I got quite a lot of emails asking questions. I still do get the occasional question, and I still do put out assistance to anybody who wants to know better. And I got a nice little comment from Lindsay Cooper on a survival skills post, which critiqued a YouTube video which said, in the turn, you never pull on the clutch. And I actually pointed out a raft of exceptions to this never rule. Now, I'll admit the YouTuber did pin and post a comment when he said except under 15 miles per hour, which suggested he'd realized himself after posting the video that it's almost never a good idea to say never, because someone does come along and point out exceptions. And I did point out, that I managed to actually stall and drop my old XPR 500. I was turning right from a main road across oncoming traffic, and I let the clutch out a little bit too rapidly, and being a sort of a fairly big single, power pulses were fairly few and far between on those bikes, and the engine simply wasn't actually up to revs to enable it to carry through to the next combustion cycle. So it simply stopped. As the bike stopped, I fell over sideways, and the car coming the other way had to stop and wait for me to pick the bike up, which was rather embarrassing. Now, Lindsay said, after I talked about using the clutched through turns, that she said right-hand turns out of junctions are my nemesis, so this was really useful. So I went on to expand the advice for her a little. So basically I was saying that slipping the clutch through a right turn is actually good practice. What you end up doing is breaking the direct connection between the throttle and the rear wheel. So if you inadvertently tweak the throttle, the bike doesn't suddenly shoot forward and then stop dead again. So with the clutch breaking that direct connection, how do you control your speed? If you don't want to shut the throttle, the simple answer is you do it with the rear brake. It's the basic technique we teach new learners to perform exercises like the figure of 8 and the U-turn on CBT, but for some reason it seems to be one of the first that's forgotten by riders as they get out on the road. Now I went on to give another example of why this sort of rear brake control to smooth out the speed with that sort of direct link broken by the clutch. Talking about my CX500 now. As you possibly recall, if you've ever ridden one of those bikes, they had a sort of big, thick, very comfy, but somewhat bouncy seat. And the bike itself also had fairly long travel for its age, bouncy suspension. So what used to happen on those is when you hit a bump, you actually bounced up and down on the seat and inadvertently tweak the throttle. It was a technique that a problem I got used to, but it caught me out right outside West Hampstead Fire Station, which isn't a million miles away from here actually. when I hit a big bump just as I was starting to make the turn. I ended up adding some extra throttle, which I wasn't expecting, as I sort of bounced on the seat, and I had to scrabble around a bit to actually shed that extra speed and make the right turn without crashing into the pavement on the other side of the road. So I learned on that bike just how useful the rear brake is to control speed and how important it is to break that direct throttle rear wheel connection with the clutch. Now, this works even when we're anxious to make a quick getaway onto a busy road. And this is where a lot of riders actually come a cropper, because in theory, it seems intuitive that you want to get rid of the clutch as soon as possible, get on the power and start twisting the throttle if you want to accelerate and, so as I say, speed up in thick, heavy traffic. But in fact, this actually makes it worse, because we can make the turn more rapidly if we're going a bit slower. The slower we go, the tighter we can turn. So by slowing down, using the clutch to break the drive to the rear wheel, using the rear brake to control the speed, we can turn tight, we can finish the turn very rapidly, and then pointing in the right direction, we can let the clutch go and we can twist the throttle and accelerate. But if we try to do that mid-turn, all we're going to do is push ourselves wide, and then we've got to back off the throttle and try to sort it all out. So it actually takes longer if you release the clutch too soon on the middle of a tight turn. Now, I expanded the advice for Lindsay. I suggested that some simple exercises off-road would really help here. And I suggest using the lane markings between car parking spaces, obviously on an empty section of car park, not one that's full of cars. But the advantage of doing this is that you have something that is roughly the same width as a typical road, but rather than curbs bounding it, you simply have white paint. So it takes away the fear of actually running into a curb while you're trying to do a sharp turn. So the trick is to work on both right and left turns, of course, but also to do the two different styles of turns we do. The one where we come to a complete standstill, as we might have to do at a stop junction, for example, or if the road's busy. And rolling turns where we come up to a giveaway junction and we look both ways and there's nothing coming. The technique basically relies on getting the speed off in good time while still upright, then to get on the clutch nice and early so that we can slip the clutch right the way through the turn till we're upright, and only then does the clutch ease out and we twist the throttle to speed away. But don't forget, we do need to drive the bike through the turn, and that's where the back brake comes in handy, because it stops the bike accelerating too much. And one final tip, don't forget that when we're doing this for real on the road, there's very often a change in camber when we're turning right, and this can catch people out quite dramatically, because as we top the middle of the road, where the white line is, the camber suddenly changes. We've driven the bike up it, so uphill on the way up to the middle of the road, and then it drops away on the far side. It goes down again, and that's where a lot of people get into trouble, because the bike suddenly accelerates. If they're not using the rear brake, then there's no way of controlling the speed, and that's when people start shutting the throttle. So remember, use the rear brake, get the turn done slow and tight, and then counterintuitively you can get on the throttle sooner and accelerate clear from that slow turn. So I hope that helps. If you've got any more questions, of course, on anything, my doctor's surgery is still open, and if you've got any puzzles for which you'd like a reasoned answer rather than a snappy soundbite, drop me a line. You can use email, Facebook messages, or for preference, my PM system on my coffee pages. Right. Okay, it is time to wrap up the show, and before you go, don't forget, it is your help that helps me keep writing these shows and producing biking content. So do pop over to my coffee shop and see what's on offer over there. And if you are out there enjoying your ride today, it does look like a pleasant day today, make sure you stay shiny side up, and then you can catch me for the next show, and I'll see you again on Sunday. And with a bit of luck, I will now play the video segment.